Well, hello, Zivko. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Michael. How are you?
I am doing great. Now, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
That's right.
Zivko,
Yes.
which of course is Macedonian,
Yes.
which of course in Macedonian means really cool guy on today's show.
Direct translation.
I've been studying about this. I'm, I wanted to impress you. So I told the folks that you are the CEO of Dunmaker, and
Right.
how one of the things that you do is very similar to what I do, is that you help businesses easily get more clients, especially on LinkedIn organically. And
Yeah.
you are also the host of the Dunmaker podcast. So first,
Right.
tell me a little bit more about you personally. I know you have an exciting, different background. We didn't all start out doing podcasts and stuff. So tell us a little bit more about you personally, professionally, how you get started in all this.
So I graduated for radio broadcasting, and that's where the podcast kind of stayed with me because I graduated for radio broadcasting. I spent 3.5 years in radio, and there was a day where a TV conglomerate acquired the cluster of the stations where I worked at, and I started to notice that the writing was on the wall. Radio is not an appreciated medium. PPC at that point was eating up ad spend. A lot of people were seeing that you can have a lot more flexibility with Google pay per click as opposed to paying 30, 60, 100K for a flight of 3 months for a morning show hosting, morning show program or stuff like that. So once the merger happened, that was my cue to start moving more into the digital world. So one of the guys that I worked there, he was like, "Hey, look, I'm building a website. Can you help me with some of the stuff for the website?" And that kind of got me into the digital part of marketing. So started with websites, but every time I would finish a website, the client will talk about sales. Now, I like to talk to people. I enjoy talking to people. So naturally, that kind of led me more into sales jobs. So the digital marketing and the websites was a side gig always for many years, and I just focused more on sales, door-to-door sales, calling, and stuff like that. So with time, when when I started making more and more, I would say, bigger deals, kind of more interesting things. I started to notice that, look, like as a sales guy, you get like maybe 10%, maybe 20% commission, if at best. So 90% of it goes to the business. So like, why can't you be the business and kind of divvy up in a different way? So once COVID happened, that was, I think, the catalyst for me because at that point I was a director of national sales and marketing for a company that did private school uniforms. So I would go to schools, convince them, the school board to go with our school uniform supplier or change or introduce a school uniform. When COVID happened, of course, no one was going to school, and that was the opportunity for me to be like, look, I'm going to go all in on Dumbmaker. I already had it, I already had clients, but now I'm going to just focus on it 100%. And that's where everything I was doing before, the way I talked to people, the way I opened doors was through LinkedIn. I would message someone, I would get a name. When I would get to a business, I would mention, hey, is Deborah in today? Because I talked with her a little bit on LinkedIn. So I used that, made it into a product, which is what Dominic does today, finding people on LinkedIn organically, manually, without automations, without bots, connect them, and let the business owner and the prospect see if there's an opportunity to work together.
I think that's great. When we talked yesterday, I was pleasantly surprised that we actually have a shared background in the radio industry because that's where I started out too. That's how I got going in all this. And I think I told you in the olden days, when I was in college and recently graduated, I interned at Kiss Radio in Los Angeles, and I thought I was big time because I was on at 2 in the morning, and I wake up my parents and make them listen to me. Mom, Dad, look. Yeah, that's really great. Can we go to bed now? So I think that, I'm excited to have another professional on with me today. So tell me a little bit about your Dunmaker business, how that works. Because one of the things I found interesting about you is that you're extremely specialized because you're working primarily in helping businesses get customers from LinkedIn. Tell me more about that business model.
Right. So the main thing that I want people to keep in mind about LinkedIn is authenticity. So you can confirm that this person is who they say they are. On other platforms, it's very difficult. I mean, uh, it's paid on some platforms to verify stuff like that, but on LinkedIn, if I say I'm the CEO of Dunmaker, that's who I am. I'm a real person. So that level of authenticity, and you can verify that person is the owner or who they are and what they say they are. Plus, you also see the level of um, employees they have, how long they've been in business. That level of transparency you just can't find in other places. When you combine that with Sales Navigator, which is the subscription of LinkedIn, to open LinkedIn and create it into a database, now you eliminate the need to scrape data. So if you're not technical and you're just good at sales, you get Sales Navigator. So now I have verified, let's call them leads. I know that's the right person. I don't need to scrape the data. And now I have a way to identify the right ones for my business, my ICPs, ideal client profiles. So the way that I do it is I learned the hard way that LinkedIn doesn't like automations at all. So I got my profile blocked several times, and it was always because someone will sell me on an automation. It's fantastic. It's great. It will save you time. I'm like, okay, let me give it a shot. Let me just try it. Literally within the first week or two, just the account gets blocked. And it's clearly in the terms and conditions of LinkedIn to not use automations, to not augment what is happening on the website. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it the way that I was doing it, manually. So I started focusing heavily on building a team and a culture. You have to have a good team because you can go out and you can find prospects, you can find clients that want to get clients on LinkedIn. But the person that works with you that will do the outreach, they need to have the same understanding and passion and drive to be like, I'm working, let's say, with Michael, and Michael, this is his livelihood. I have to get him the right people, and that you need to develop as a culture. So in the beginning, I thought it's just about the process. It isn't about the process. It's about building a team. And till today, that's the number one focus in Dunmaker. We work with people. It's done by people manually. So I have to build a good culture and a good team. Once you have those two understanding that LinkedIn is the way that I don't need to scrape data, I don't need to be technical, and I can build a good team that cares and wants to work with businesses, now you start to do the outreach. The outreach is done very straightforward, same way that you would do it as if you're on LinkedIn. You connect with people, you send a connection message. I use connection messages to be transparent with my intentions, why I'm connecting, because I've done my filtering in Sales Navigator the right way. So I know I'm going to talk with the right person, I'm going to send them the right message. So those two things paired together, plus a simple 3-step follow-up, 4-step follow-up, 2-step follow-up, whatever you think is of value. What I mean by of value, I have lawyers that will send 1 or 2 messages because that's all they need to say. I'm going to say the first thing in my first message, and the second one might be a follow-up because timing might be off. I have other, let's say, digital agencies that will do multiple touch points because they just need to do that. The competition is a lot higher. So once you understand you want to have a two-step message or 3-step message or 4-step message, you have those things in place, and now you need to just keep tracking. So tracking, again, this is where the team comes into play. You need to track if I'm sending messages to people that are interested, not interested. I need to remove some of the ones that said they're not interested. I need to keep following up with the ones that said, talk to me 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. Have that due diligence. In the beginning, you can definitely do it on a spreadsheet. You don't need to have a CRM right away because the volume is a lot lower. On LinkedIn, there is a limitation. With Sales Navigator, you can send 40 connection messages per day max. So if you have like 20% of those to connect with you, you can definitely enter this data manually into some sort of spreadsheet to get going. Once you have all of this in place, you will start to see, depending on your value proposition and what you're offering to people, who's accepting it, who's not accepting it, and how the sales calls start to go. I think most people focus too much on the processes as opposed to their value proposition. In my world, the value proposition is the most important thing. Why should we work together? Why do you want to do this with me? What is the differentiating factor between me and anybody else out there? Are you listing benefits? Are you listing capabilities? Are you truly talking to your potential clients, or are you just like spraying message or something like that? Typically, this is where people will see low conversion rate. They'll say LinkedIn doesn't work. It's around the value proposition. It needs to be very well. Once you pair those things together, if a prospect says, yes, I want to talk with you, I pass on. I book the call and I pass it on to the client, and that's where the hard part basically ends.
Wow. That's a lot of information. Obviously, it must work because that's how you and I met.
Yeah.
You contacted me through LinkedIn, and here I am. We had a delightful conversation and made arrangements to get together today, have this call. But I have a question about your LinkedIn. When you're saying that LinkedIn doesn't like automations, are you saying in terms of automations, is it like a pre-scheduling post, like on Facebook and things like that? Are those the type of automations that they don't like? Can you give me more specifics on that?
Absolutely. So, scheduling and posting is not really an issue. What I mean by that is, I've talked to a lot of my clients that are social media agencies, and there is one. Uh, it's kind of like a known secret, but you can't verify it. If you use an automation to post, you're not going to get penalized, but your reach and engagement will be slightly lower if you manually press the post button. Can you keep pressing the button manually? No, not really. You don't have enough time. So we use schedules, which is perfectly fine. What LinkedIn doesn't like to do when it comes to automations is something like Apollo, where Apollo opens Sales Navigator and scrapes it. And this is where LinkedIn is like, look, this is my data. You're just scraping my data. I don't like that. And if you have users that do that, they start to penalize. So I haven't checked yet, but last time I checked, Apollo, Seamless AI were a couple of companies that their LinkedIn company pages were taken down because they were running a lot of these automations. And they also say you can't augment how LinkedIn looks. So Apollo will have like a little box, or some of these automations will have like a little box or a side panel that kicks out.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn says don't change the way that LinkedIn looks, and don't scrape the data. Don't send automated messages through your automation tools, because I talked with one founder that has an automation tool, and he's like, very clearly, they know what the API is used for. You have to use their API, so they know if you're sending messages and what happens. It's just a matter of time if you get your account blocked. So just don't do it.
That sounds like a wise and prudent advice. Obviously, it's extremely successful for you. One of the things that intrigued me about your business model is that you're the only person that I've ever talked to that focuses specifically on LinkedIn. And after you explain it, I understand the reason why. And I can see how effective and productive that would be, especially if you're trying to reach business professionals and not just like, some random people on some of the other social media networks. So it seems to me that if you're looking to target specific business professionals, a little more high-end clientele, then your LinkedIn solution is definitely the way to go. So kudos for that. You're doing a really good job. I'm really impressed about that. So I have a question about your podcast. I know you've got a podcast called the Done Maker Podcast. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it started with, I always say this on the calls, it started as a selfish thing where I had some questions, and what I was seeing online and on YouTube, it fell into two categories. Number one, it would be like Alex Hermosi, Gary Vee, Grant Cardone. These guys, to me, nowadays, are just entertainment. The advice is not applicable at all where I am. These are 100 million, 150 million, billion-dollar companies that are talking about the advice they're giving. Like, why are you even doing like LTV to CAC ratio calculations where you can't even sustain like 5 or 6 clients coming in every month? Like, if 5, 6 clients come into your business, you can't onboard them. So let's not talk about LTV to CAC ratios or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are just entertainment. And then the other category was buy my course bros. That's what I would call them. They give you information, but like, this is not really. It sounds really catchy, but once you start applying it, it doesn't work. And I was like, there's not a single comment here that says, I tried exactly what you said, it doesn't work. Because that's what I did. So what I started doing was, I was good at radio, I really love radio, and I have a good relationship with a bunch of clients. So I started asking these questions, and I said, why don't we do the podcast where I'll ask you some questions about what you're an expert at. A lot of people will take value of it, and I will also ask them some questions about, what I wanted to understand. We chop those things up. You can use them for your social presence. It helps our LinkedIn outreach because you're posting videos on top of your other content. So it's very beneficial for everyone. And that's the way that it started. Then with time, I realized that even with people that are not my clients, I wanted to ask them some questions. Why not offer and see who would want to be on the podcast? In the beginning, I was very scared by the numbers that I have that were very low, and I'm new. And I thought that people would just say, no, this guy's a loser, he's a nobody. And then I was surprised, and people wanted to talk. Because, like, look, it's very good. You want to have this interview-style videos on social media. So they were like, fantastic, I have someone that is good. He will interview me, I'll take the content, and I'll put it on my social media platforms. Beneficial for his listeners, but also very beneficial for myself. And I started to get traction with people that I thought I would never be able to talk with. Someone, David Boehm, I keep using him as an example. The guy sold 17 companies, older gentleman, told me so many things in that podcast that I started applying how to hire. Um, like he told me like 50% of the hires that I had were wrong, but the ones that were right came out of the box swinging right away. So that's kind of how you can identify a good employee. That doesn't matter which level you hire. I've done it 17 times. It's always the same kind of pattern. So with the podcast, it started to go in the direction of these are now the people that I would really want to ask some questions. Where before it was let's talk to my clients and then let's talk to some other people that are interesting. And now it goes into the I want to talk with that person. Let me just reach out to them and then see if they want to be, I guess, on a podcast.
I think that's a great business model. You and I work similar in that area,
Yeah.
and I need to ask you. So, one of the things that I do in my business is that I actually create custom podcasts for my clients.
Nice.
For example, like I've got and I create power teams to kind of help ease the pain of any cost that may be incurred. So I have an elemental natural doctor, a Chinese medicine doctor, who's partnered
Nice.
up with a autoimmune disease specialist, and we created a show for them called The Wellness Warriors. So
Okay.
what we're able to do is create content for both of them and then share it on their respective social media channels and get the word out, podcasting, radio, all this kind of stuff helps to really boost the credibility of a business owner or a manager rather than just the same old stuff that we see all the time on social media, in particular. I don't want to besmirch any social media, but the ones that are not LinkedIn. Okay. So, how was that? I think that was very tactful and diplomatic. So I hope Zuck doesn't call me up and go, Mike, what the heck are you doing? I do so much business with you. Do you know what I mean? But I digress. But it really helps. It helps to put their business in a unique light and create a unique selling point that
Hmm.
nobody else has. It's like, so why should I do business with you? Well, in addition to all these other things like everybody else, I've got this amazing podcast and I can share all this information with you and so on and so forth. So I'm a big believer in the podcast model, either it's more similar to mine or what you're doing.
Hmm.
I think it's great. Now, I know that when we were talking yesterday, you were asking me, are there any topics that I stay away from or don't cover because they may be controversial? How about you? Do you fall into that same category at all?
So there are. So today I had a podcast with Kimberly, and she has a show called Race Talk, and she wants to talk about DEI and how that works in business and how the landscape looks nowadays. How has that changed for small businesses, and how that looks for anybody that is classifying themselves as a small business or a startup or a large business or mid market. The way that I would approach it is I would talk about the business aspect because in my understanding if the business makes sense, we can make it happen. The topics that I started to kind of stay away is if it's political, if it's religious stuff, anything that is outside of the domain that I know, because I'm not an expert in those things. I live in a small world where I have my business, I have my family, I try to enjoy it. The other stuff is I'm not an expert at those things, and if I start talking about it, I might say stuff that I'm completely off, that I just don't have the information. But when it comes to the business side of it, we can definitely talk about that. And I've had situations where there was one podcast with Chuck. Chuck talked about PR, and we used Mulvaney and the Bud Light commercial compared to Ben and Jerry's commercials. It's a controversial topic, but we talked about how to not execute bad, how to do it the right way. When a brand stands behind what they believe in, like Ben and Jerry, versus when a brand tried to use it as a brownie point kind of situation and collect some sort of a moment that is happening, and they use Mulvaney for Bud Light, which is
Yeah.
completely off the mark for their brand. These are the topics that I like to talk about to understand if you because I asked Chuck, I'm like, Chuck, isn't there like a guy in the marketing room that is like, bad idea, guys, don't do it. Like, he's like, believe me, I've been in those meetings. You raise the hand, and someone else says, no, we're gonna go this direction, and that's usually when catastrophe starts to you see it unfold in the public.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for those of the folks listening today who may be contemplating starting their own podcast or being a guest on a podcast or something like that. You're going to need to make a choice. I think you need to have a plan. Okay, this is what my podcast show is going to be about, and make a little outline and stick to those things and don't go outside of those parameters. You are much braver than I am because I don't do anything that could be controversial because I also I don't know a lot about that at all. But when you said the name of that show, what's this called? Race Talk?
Yeah.
So immediately the mental picture that came into my brain was my grandson Cole, who used to be a driver with NASCAR. So I'm thinking, oh, it's a race car show. So I immediately got confused. It's like race talk. Oh, that could be really good.
Yeah.
I've had people that we talk about, say, are you a racist? Oh, yeah, I love NASCAR. No, not that kind of, So, but, all humor aside, you are much braver than I am. I don't do anything that would be controversial. I don't want to alienate any clients. We've seen what's happened just in the last week where some of these, TV talk show hosts and news anchors and other guys, they're all getting pulled because they've forgotten who their client base is. And they're putting their agenda and ideology at the forefront, and they end up being preachers rather than entertainers. Because at the end of the day, you and I, radio, podcast, we're pretty much entertainers unless you want to be a political commentator or something like that. I think they've forgotten who their audience was. So if you're starting your own podcast, you need to remember who is your audience and what information and content are you going to provide to your audience that, number one, is going to benefit them, and number two, at the same time, going to benefit you and your business, going to help make it easy for people to give you money because they like the content that you're providing, or they like the content that your clientele is providing. One of the studios I work with around here has a very controversial guy, one might say, on his show. And the producer I work with, he told me, I need to pull this guy because this guy was out in left field talking about all kinds of wackadoodle stuff that I don't even want to mention on today's show, but he was incredibly offensive. People would call in every time his show aired, and they were all offended, and they hated this guy. And this guy's gone. So just be cool. Try to present good content that benefits your target listener base and not necessarily you and your personal ideology. Just
There was
a normal person.
what I wanted to add to that was the Chris. He does social media from Alista Marketing. We talked with Chris about this, and he's like, "Look, you can have personal opinions and you can have personal views. The moment you attach that with your business, it's the business views.
Right.
So if you want to do a podcast or you have strong beliefs about some things, you can have them as personal, but the moment you attach that to the business, it translates for your clients and customers as that is the business views. And this is where things start to get tricky. The more you are what we call back in the day like a shock jock, you will have a lot of people that will not like you. Do you want that for your business? If you're in entertainment, then I don't know. But when it comes to business, I would tell you, have personal views aside. Do not associate them, meaning don't post them on your company's profile. Don't post them on your company's social media or websites, because this is when things start to get convoluted. And as a business, it will not be, you're not making people giving you money easy. You're just making it more difficult for them.
Right. It's one of the core principles of making it easy for people to give you money is don't make them angry. It's like you know, there's three reasons why people do business with anybody. They need it, they want it, or they like you. You have to have two of the three components to make the sale. The most important one is they have to like you. If they don't like you, that means they don't trust you. People don't do business with people they don't trust, and you're out of the game. So that's it. Sometimes, people will buy stuff that we really don't need, but we like it, and we like the person or the company selling it to us, so we'll make the sale. If just don't do something that's going to make people not like you, because that is not good business at all. What are the types of folks that you've got on your podcast? I know you've got, are they business CEOs or regular business folks? Tell me who you're talking to.
So I would put them in a couple of buckets. So the first one, it would be more practical, and the other one will be more mindset. So those are the two large buckets that I would put. So someone like Priscilla would be like on the mindset, and David Bowen will be on the mindset of these are some journeys that happen. Tom was someone that's a CFO that we talked to a couple of days ago, who talked about how he got fired 4 times as a CFO. But when you hear the stories why, and the bad stuff that the CEOs were doing that he had to report and how that happened, you start to understand, there's a different picture of how things might go in a large organizational enterprise.
Yeah.
And on the other bucket is people that give practical advice. Someone like Maggie Swift, she will give practical advice about SEO. Nicole as well. People that would give practical advice for PPC ads or for running a small business. These are typical business owners that have either as a service what you're offering, or serial entrepreneurs. They open a couple of businesses and they're saying, like, look, if you open a new business, the beginning should look like this. And if you're at a larger stage, this is how you should be operating. These are the stuff they need to include. And when you have both of those groups, depending on what you need, if you need a mindset shift or an understanding, you would listen to those podcasts. And if you want practical, something I can apply right away today, you listen to the other bucket of people.
So in the couple of minutes we have left here, Zivko, tell us, how can someone get a hold of you if they'd like some more information on your Dunmaker company? Maybe they might even be willing to be a guest on your show, which is always pretty cool. So how can they get a hold of you?
Of course. So if you go on YouTube, the Dunmaker Podcast, Dun is finished like D-O-N-E, Dunmaker Podcast. And if you go on LinkedIn, Zivko Dodovski, Z-I-V-K-O, Dodovski, you can find me there as well. Or if you just look up for Dunmaker on Google, you'll find me, and then that's the easiest way to get in touch.
Zivko Dodovski.
Yes.
Did I do that right?
Yes.
I've been brushing up on my Macedonian lately. And by the way, let's give a little plug for each other. I'm going to be on your show in the next couple of weeks. Isn't that right?
That's right. So we recorded a podcast, and I think in around 3 weeks, our podcast will go live on YouTube on the Dunmaker Podcast.
Yeah, so be sure to look for the illustrious Michael Mullenhauer on Zivko's podcast. Timothy's on ours today. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Any final words of wisdom before we head on down the road?
What you see as success for yourself doesn't mean that it's success for someone else, so be happy with what you have.
I love that. Mine is look at what everybody else is doing and then don't do that, because they're all doing it wrong.
That's a good one.
So do whatever it takes to get out there and make it easy for people to give you money. I got that from Mike Ferry, a real estate guy from years ago. And he said, Michael, here's the key to success. Look at what everyone else is doing and don't do that, because they're all doing it wrong. If they were doing it right, they'd all be rich. So just do the opposite of that.
Good advice.
I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been great. I look forward to being a guest on your show. And I'll see you guys all again next time with another exciting adventure in the world of Make It Easy for People to Give You Money.